I don't really think I need this, but I'll use it just because it looks like I'm about to do some stand-up comedy. Folks, thank you so much for coming out to the opening day of the 2025 Albuquerque Film and Music Experience. My name is Robert Luke, and I'm one of the SAG-AFTRA volunteers that'll be hosting throughout the week. And so I just hope you enjoy every moment, every panel discussion. Today, you're very fortunate in that we have two alumni of the Albuquerque Film and Music Experience. These filmmakers are going to discuss with us how to get into the filmmaking industry, highlighting the crucial role of networking at events just like this one. They'll also share personal stories about building relationships, leveraging connections, and navigating their own unique journey to find success. So I give to you emerging filmmaker Emma Swider and veteran filmmaker Michelle Souza.
Excuse me.
Hello? Okay. I had no idea I would end up in films. I was born and raised in Honolulu, Hawaii, when there were two hotels on the beach of Waikiki, meaning a long time ago. I'm 73 years old. And I was a nerd in school. I was a social outcast, and so I started to volunteer at the community theater there, and that was the only thing I knew how to do. I could dance a little bit, and I could paint flats, and I was sort of happy with that. So when I went to college in Claremont, I thought, well, I'll have to major in something, like science, math, English, simple masters back then. So I decided to master in theater because it's all I knew how to do. And I did that, and the day after I graduated, I had gotten myself a job because I was a responsible young human being, and I thought, I got to get a job. So I got a job in Santa Maria, California, which is halfway between Los Angeles and San Francisco, at a little summer stock theater, which was a great place to be. We'd bus and truck shows from Santa Maria down to Solvang. You literally throw the flats on a flatbed truck, and we drive on down there, and it's like, 1973 and 74 and 75, and we're all hippies. And through the 3 summers I was there, I met 2 set designers that were set designers at the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, which was a really big theater off of Union Square, and they did rotating shows. It was very well known back then. I don't know what it's like now, but at the time it was, at the top of its class, so to speak. And I ended up getting a job there because they knew I could do props. And it was, again, a really freewheeling thing. Like, I remember walking down the street carrying replica AK-47s on my shoulder, and nobody did anything. I mean, not at all. You could just walk down the street with whatever. You could be covered with blood.
Well, you look kind of tough.
Yeah, I was tough then. And I'd wear like my military fatigues, and anyhow, I had a great time. But at the end of, I guess it was 4 years of working there, I decided that I was going to quit, and I was going to become a secretary. That was the only thing I knew to do. I thought, well, I'll just quit and become a secretary. How hard can that be? And right at that time, I got a call, and it was from the IATSE, which is the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, Local 16 in San Francisco. They are, in San Francisco, a mixed local, meaning that local is responsible for film, television, commercial work, load-ins and load-outs for Moscone Center when Apple conventions come in. We were in charge of concerts that were given, rock and roll, symphony, opera, whatever. And I got a call from a person that said, we've sort of heard about you, and we'd like you to come down and interview with us. We'd like to hear from you, and you can hear from us. Come to find out, they had no women working at all in this union. It was one of the at the time, one of the top really tough locals in the country, like New York being number one, and I think Chicago was another one, maybe Boston and San Francisco. They had no women working, and more importantly, they didn't want women at all in their local. But the business agent knew that they were going to be sued completely if they didn't bring a woman in soon, you know? I mean, they were getting to a point, I think a couple women had tried and had run screaming from the room or crying, dissolving, leaving. And some local stagehand on the stage crew that I knew from ACT had recommended me. So I get this call, and I said, okay, sure. I didn't know what they did, really. I said, I'll come in, and when should I come in? And they said, Monday through Friday between 8 and 5 is fine. Even though if you were a guy and you were trying to do what I was going to do, they only saw you between 12 and 1 at lunch when they were all gone. So they didn't need people, they didn't want people, but they needed a woman. So they brought me in, and I sat from across the business agent at a desk that I swear is bigger than the Resolute desk that's in the Oval Office. And I sat there with all these hippy-dippy jewels on, and he said, now, Michelle, we'd like to try you out, and we'd like you to try us out. And I went, okay, whatever. He said, okay, we're going to send you to the San Francisco Opera. And I went, okay, fine. So I was living with a guy who was a stagehand at the time, and I'll never forget this. We go to the Opera House, which if you've ever been to San Francisco, it's the War Memorial Building. It's like literally a city block. It's huge. It's 5 stories tall. At the time, it had a fly floor that was all, ropes and pulleys, elevators to go to the top. The thing was enormous. And my boyfriend takes me up in his rickety VW van to the back, and I look at this place, and I go, no, I think we should go home now. It's like 7 o'clock in the morning. He goes, no, you made a commitment. You have to follow through with this. You said you would join this, group. And I said, no, it's okay. And he said, Michelle, you have to go in there. And I said again, no, I think we'll just go home. They won't miss me, right?
Excuse me, Michelle, what was the apprehension?
My apprehension was that it was frigging huge. This thing was enormous, and I didn't know what I was getting into. So he literally threw himself across, threw the door open, and kicked me out of the van and said, I'll pick you up later. So I went in there, and I walked in the back. There's a guard. I go down the hallway where all the opera divas of the time, which is like Luciano Pavarotti and Placido Domingo and all these people are, going to be singing. And I go downstairs to the prop room, and it's downstage left. And upstage right is the Carpenter building, the Carpenter's room with the time clock. I'll never forget it. And it's a completely open stage. So imagine a stage that's the whole city block of this, 5 stories up, no sets or flats or anything, empty. And there's 49 men up there all hanging out. On the fly floor, they all know each other. They're 18 to whatever, 50. They're milling around, high-fiving, slapping each other on the back, and like I'm going, oh my God, I had no idea. So I thought, okay, Michelle, you're really small and short and quiet and whatever. So I literally followed the stage. I went straight up against the wall, and when I got to the back, I went straight. I did a 45-degree angle, and I got into what was a scrum of men. Huge men, and like I'm going, excuse me, I'm trying to get to the time clock. I'm trying not to let them see me. I'm trying to hide, and punch a clock. And that was the start of 3 years with these 49 guys who didn't want me there. And I could tell you lots of stories about that, good stories actually, and bad stories. But the end of the 3 years, I went to the business agent again, and I said, you know what? And I was a good worker. I mean, I just worked. I didn't make waves. I didn't talk about anything. I went to him, and I said, and basically what he wanted is he wanted me to feminize the prop department, whatever that meant, but nobody wanted me to do that. But he was trying to do that. So I went to him, and I said, you know what? I'm beating my head against the wall, and there's no change. You got to get me out of here. And he said, I don't care. I'm sending you back for a 4th year. And I, little good Michelle, who never made waves, never anything, I stood up from my side of the Resolute desk, and I looked at him with all 4 feet, 9 inches. I was a little taller back then. And I said, okay. I said, but if I come to you bleeding from beating my head against the wall next year, you better get me out of there. And I turned around and I walked out without saying goodbye. And the next day he called me and he gave me a commercial. So I got out of the Opera House and I did all kinds of stuff. So I hauled 4/0 cable, I did conventions. That was hard. Electrical work. I ran Follow Spot. That was hard. I did Madonna concerts with the guys. I did commercials where we were making fake snow in the middle of summer. And I worked on some films and I worked on TV. And I ended up, because of my prop work, basically going into the prop departments of these things when they needed help. And I worked my way up, and in 1990 or 89, I became the prop master on a TV show called Midnight Caller, which was a 3-season thing with Gary Cole, from actors from LA. And we got a lot of different actors that came up, like Hoyt Axton. I worked with all kinds of people. And I met my husband there. He was a producer, production manager, and eventually I moved down to LA, and I got my union card in LA with Local 44. So I have 2 locals. I'm retired out of 2 locals, 44 and 16. And my career has been blessed, I guess, for somebody that didn't know what they were doing. I was making good money. It was a union job, and I basically only worked with 3 prop masters. I am a prop master. I hold the prop master card, but I had a stroke when I was 40 years old on Midnight Caller. It was probably due to stress. It's very stressful being a prop master. So I basically have, over the years, I'm the only person I know that has deliberately demoted herself from the prop master position. And what I do is I'm an amazing shopper. I keep the off. What I used to do was have like $10,000 cash in my beat up old army jeans, and I go to like Beverly Hills Rodeo Drive and buy 5 different briefcases for Tom Cruise so he could pick which one he wanted. So that I became an expert at that, and that was a really great place for me to land, because I'm an explorer by nature, and I would love to go to these things and just have experiences with all kinds of people. I'll never forget going to a foundry in East LA one time, because I don't know, we had a set which was set in a foundry, or we needed some sort of equipment, and I'm going there to rent stuff from them or whatever. And I went into this foundry, and they're pouring liquid silver, and I'm going, oh my God, how do you do that? Let me watch. I'm going to take pictures. So that was a really great thing. And if you saw my bio, I worked with a lot of different actors, and I have observed a lot of different actors, usually the upper echelon big people like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sandra Bullock and Kevin Costner and blah, 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 blah. And I've seen a lot of stuff in my 30 years working like this, and I have a lot of stories. But when I retired, I came here 13 years ago, and met Ivan and went, one day I'm going to come see your films, and I did that for a couple years, and I volunteered. And I've been doing volunteering for a few years now, and it was during this volunteering time that I met Emma, and now I'm going to pass the mic to her, and she can tell you her story. And then when we're done, we'll take all kinds of questions, comments, whatever, if that's okay with you, Emma.
Thank you, Michelle.
Absolutely. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Emma Swider. I'm a filmmaker based out of New York City, and I also work professionally as an assistant editor. Most recently, I wrapped on the latest Darren Aronofsky movie, Caught Stealing, starring Austin Butler. Prior to that, I was working on Caught Stealing Day One. A Quiet Place Day One, from the Quiet Place series, and then a couple of other Netflix projects before that. And yeah, honestly, my journey starts mainly hugely from this festival, but to dial it back a little bit, it really started when I attended film school at Montclair State University in New Jersey. And so while I was there, I quickly started to realize that the people who had graduated and were getting jobs and such, it was a lot based on who they knew. It was a lot about the networking, and yeah, it's all about who you know. And at the time, it was definitely, that's a little perhaps discouraging when you first hear something like that. As someone with no family connections or anything like that prior to entering, that can be a little daunting, but it's totally 100% possible. And it's really, I can't tell you how much networking has just really changed the game for me. But while I was in school, I was noticing those were the people getting jobs. And so we wanted to make those connections. And so we, obviously pursuing internships, that's always huge. If you're in school, definitely do that and build up your resume. But really, we wanted to be around people that were also actively creating work and actively working in the industry, and a place that we knew we'd be able to kind of readily access that were film festivals. So we had created this one film. It was a document. Me and one of my best friends, her name is Emily, we co-directed a film called Meeting Joseph, which we ended up submitting to the Albuquerque Film and Music Experience. And we got accepted really incredibly. And if you have, side note, if you have films, if you're filmmakers and have projects, please submit them to the indie festivals. I know everyone's always like, oh, get into Sundance or TIFF or one of the big ones, but sure, all that's nice and fancy, but the reality is, A, that's incredibly hard. It's so much about campaigning and all this insider stuff, but there is so much at the indie festivals. I have been to indie festivals across the world, across the country, and it's always filled with working professionals who are so eager to meet and talk and honestly collaborate with other people that they meet. They see other filmmakers creating impressive work and want to work with the DP that worked on that film, worked with the sound mixer that worked on that film. So really, we just knew we wanted to be in a film festival place. So we made this film, it got accepted, and so we took the journey out. We're from New Jersey, so we flew out. It was our very first film festival that we ever attended, so we were very excited. So we screened it here. Also, that's the other thing too. I know a lot of people will submit their films, but not always attend the festivals. And I understand things come up, you can't always be everywhere. But definitely attend. It's so much fun to be at these networking events and talking to people, just getting the chance to network like that. But anyway, so we do that, and I meet the incredible Michelle, who was actually moderating our Q&A for our film. And I was just incredibly blessed to do so because we had talked a little bit prior to our screening, just kind of getting to know each other and the film and such, and after as well. And I told you that really my passion, what brought me to filmmaking, was editing. I was in high school, I was always an editor, and in college that's kind of what I went in to do. But while I was there, I also realized I really enjoyed directing my own work, but editing was my strong suit. And Michelle has this lifelong friend, practically a brother, his name is Paul Levin. He is a post supervisor back in New York City, and she's like, oh, you want to go into post, you got to talk to my friend Paul. So I reached out to Paul, sent him a few emails, maybe sent him a couple more if I didn't hear back. It's always good to be consistent. Don't be annoying, but be consistent. Heard back from him. We got to meet at his office a couple times. I would have been early in my senior year at that point. But then March 2020 rolled around, of course, and we all know what happened then. Everything shut down due to COVID. The industry was at a standstill. Oh, yeah, please.
So I have to tell you that after they had lunch together or coffee or whatever, nothing ever came of that. And a year later, I'm sitting in my little house in Prescott, Arizona, and Paul calls me and he goes, what's the contact information on your friend Emma? I'm going, I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to find her. So I'm running around my house trying to find a piece of paper that's got her information on it. And Paul calls back and goes, okay, I found it. Thank you. And I'm going, oh, thank God. Okay, now back to your story.
On the opposite end of that, March 2020, whatever, I graduated in May into a dead industry that was not, working at all. So, you fill in the time with what you can. You should always be working on honing in your skills. I found myself doing a lot of local commercial work for local businesses, but still that requires your producing brain, your, being on set and production and in post and stuff. So honing those skills and filling the time. And then I remember, I think it was a Thursday night in December, and I get just a random phone call from Paul. I remember I was driving and it spooked me. I was like, whoa. As I pulled over on a little side street so I could focus. And he's like, hey, I have this project and I need someone in my office on Monday. Can you be there? And I said, yes, sir, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. You always want to be like ready to jump at an opportunity, and yeah, and then that's how I got pulled onto a Netflix project called Shirley, and starring Regina King, a really incredible actress. I love her. And yeah, got pulled onto that as an edit room assistant, which is essentially like the apprentice position over in New York. And yeah, that kind of jump started me into the industry. But then, like, you know, the networking never ends. Like, once you're in, you never know when where the next job is going to come from. Because yes, even though that puts you in the union, and oh my gosh, I have a union card, I have insurance, woohoo! They don't help you find work. So like, it's still up to you to network and continue pushing that. So once you're in it, you still want to be, especially if the film you're working on is working at a post facility, you know, you're usually around other projects, so that's an opportunity to chat with the others, you know, during lunches or whatever the heck's going on. Yeah, just constantly putting yourself out there, making a good reputation for yourself as well. People really want to know that they can count on you at the end of the day. And it's also about, you know, selling yourself to other people, and like, yes, being a good worker, but also being someone pleasant to be around. It's, you know, a lot of times when you're on these insane jobs, you know, you see them more than you see your own family, and it means a lot if you like working with each other. It makes all the difference.
I'd like to jump in for just a moment with a question for both of you. For you, Emma, you were talking about the film that you submitted to the festival. I'd like to know what that film was. And then for you, Michelle, I'd like to know what your first film was.
Yeah, so the film that I submitted to the festival, it was called Meeting Joseph. It was a documentary about, so I co-directed it with my best friend Emily, and so we followed Emily's grandmother, who went to go find the gravestone of her eldest brother, Joseph, who died in World War II, who she never got to meet. So it was this big like pilgrimage of sorts kind of for her to go find this gravestone. And the circumstances worked out perfectly because me and Emily, we decided to study abroad that semester. So we were located in a coastal shore in the UK, Bournemouth. So we were already very close. And so it kind of became like, well, they'll come visit. So the opportunities really just lined up to make that film happen. So it was a really beautiful project. I was very proud of it, and it meant everything to screen it here.
And so it was a matter of taking advantage of the opportunity that presented itself to you at that moment.
Hugely, because we did this for no money whatsoever. I shot the thing with a little like shoulder rig and like my little like Sony A7S Mark II. Like it was all very like run and gun. It was just me and her. We just followed her around, and yeah, I mean, you always want to be making work that is as polished as it can be, like stuff that represents you the most it can. You don't want to be stunted by perfection, but you know, just really making it work to the utmost extent that you can with what the means that you have.
Now, Michelle, as a veteran filmmaker, you were dropping some names earlier. But go back before you met the Arnold Schwarzeneggers, you know. What was the first one you put out there?
Well, the first one that I actually worked the full film, because the first thing I ever did, I remember, was The Right Stuff, you know, which was about the astronauts that had a big cast. But all I remember was that we shot the Houston Astrodome, and we had 4 giant sides of beef, and they all rotted during the course of a week of filming. So that's the kind of stuff, because they couldn't be refrigerated. So on these giant spits turning green and stinking, and the crew's there, and you're like going, whoa. But the first thing I ever actually, I think, was my first full-time show was the film Birdie by Alan Parker, it was Nicolas Cage's like very first or second film, and Matthew Modine played Birdie. It was a story about 2 vets who got badly damaged, one mentally and one physically. And that's where I learned, because I was so new. I had a prop mastery, and I was the assistant. And I remember we went to Alan Parker one time to talk to him about something, and I was getting really agitated. Like, I didn't know, you know, George, and my boss is trying to tell Alan what he should do or not do, and I'm just getting, whoa. And afterwards, when we walked to the prop truck, George gave me one of my big, great pieces of advice. Never let him see you sweat. He said, Michelle, you can't do that. That's what I do. If somebody says to me, Michelle, you have to get the moon for me, a director, and I've had some, maybe not the moon, but stuff really huge, you go, well, let me work on that and I'll get back to you. And then you go to the prop truck and you scream, you know, and you go, what the hell am I going to do? But that was my first actual film.
You talk a lot about being a prop master, and then you, my friend, you talk a lot about your days as an editor. Do you miss being a prop master? Do you miss the post editing?
Well, I'm retired now, and so
Was there a preference for you then?
yes, there was a choice for me when I was 50 years old. When I was 50 years old in LA, I realized that my 12-hour shooting day, which used to consist of 3/4 of it talking to my vendors, traveling, talking to vendors, getting things made, etc., and 1/4 of it driving, had flipped. And it took 3/4 of my day just to drive through LA and the basin and wherever I had to go. I mean, I was going all over. And 1/4 of it was actually getting stuff done. But the expectation was, Michelle, you get it, but we still want it tomorrow. The scene doesn't work as a surfing scene, and you got all the surfing equipment, because now you can change things in the computer like that. We've changed it to the ski slopes, but we're still shooting it tomorrow at 6 a.m. and it's 4 o'clock, and we're going, what do you do? So for me, it was time for me. So I gave myself 10 years to figure out what my plan B was. I didn't know what it was, but I knew by 60 I could retire. I've been doing it for a long time, and I could sort of see the writing on the wall for big films in LA and what it's like now. And I don't mean to be discouraging, because I talk to a lot of young people, and you can't burst bubbles with anybody, and everybody should try, but I have to reiterate what she has said. It's all about networking. It's about moving laterally within the tribe of people that you find that you can go, help me with this, help me with that, help me with something else, and you'll move up. But ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know this, it has changed so much from how it used to be. And for me, I remember what it used to be, and it used to be fun. It was hard work, but it was fun. And it's not fun anymore, at least not to me. If you're young, I'm sure it's fun, and it's great, and people should do it. But that was my story.
Let's come back around to that. I want to kind of dig deep into that. But first, Emma, being an emerging film director, and people are knowing you for that now, do you want them to know that you are really good at editing as well? Or is that important?
That's a great question. I mean, kind of both. Honestly, my editing informs my directing. I definitely come to directing as an editor and just kind of visually piece it together like that. But these days, I am very much like in the throes of post-production. I've really kind of dedicated myself to that these days. Like, I work professionally as an assistant editor on these like major motion pictures. But I'm not done directing my own stuff. There's definitely still I'm writing a script, like short script right now that I would like to shoot one day and stuff. So I still am pursuing my own projects, and will be submitting those when they're ready for it. But I really think the work I'm doing now is making me a better director. Not only because I am working under, like, most recently on my most recent project, I was working under the editor Andrew Weissblum, who's just he's #1 in New York. He does all of like most of Wes Anderson stuff. He does all of Darren Aronofsky stuff these days. Like, he's just a ton of other things, just a powerhouse. And so I'm working under him, so I'm learning how he works. I'm watching him work with the directors and like watching what that dynamic is like. So informing me for when I'm in the editing chair, what that's going to be like, and like interacting with the director for me might be like. But also, as an assistant editor, it's my job to watch the dailies, watch everything from the moment the camera rolls to the moment the camera cuts, like beyond just action and whatever, so that we can mark everything, so that nothing is missed. So that being said, I'm hearing everything that happens between action and cut. So I'm hearing Darren direct his actors. I'm hearing just these professionals work with other professionals, and you take your notes, and I'm definitely looking forward to applying it when I am once again in the director's chair.
Michelle, you wanted to say something?
Well, I just want her to tell her story about the stain right now, because it's a good one, and we should give props to Emma for this. Come on, tell that recent story, because it's a great story.
Emma. We want
Come on, Emma.
It's just I guess, again, making a good reputation for yourself and like going the extra mile to do the job correctly goes a long way as far as networking yourself and like making you a reliable team member that people want to bring on again. I was telling Michelle last night that for example, so I don't know if anyone's seen Caught Stealing, but there's a sex scene where the characters are getting undressed, and the main character, he has a beer in his hand, and as he's getting undressed, just like a drop falls out of the bottle, and it lands just below his waistband on his boxers. And it was like the scene was there in a shot, it was there in a shot, not there in a shot. And then, and then back in the shot. And, it's something that I saw, but early in the process, VFX has a ton of things flagged. So you don't want to be the person being like, hey, and they're like, yeah, we know, relax. Right? So you're like, it's fine. But then, fast forward, I'm watching what's supposed to be the final version of the film, and that error is still there. So you're like, oh God.
What do you do?
Right. What do you do? Because there's there's a sense of do I say something? Do I not? It's gonna kind of throw a wrench in it a little bit.
If you don't say something,
but if you don't, what do you do? People are gonna notice that. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, you're like, all right, I'm gonna make the call. I'm gonna be that person. So I brought it. So I'm the second assistant on this project. So I brought it to the first assistant.
And
editor.
it's your last day, sort of, right? I mean, you guys
Well,
are
it's not my last
wrapping,
day,
but you guys are
but
wrapping. You're pretty
we're
much
reaching
done.
We're reaching the end. So bring it to the first assistant. It's like, all right, we bring it to the VFX editor. The VFX editor brings it to the VFX supervisor, and we submit it to Darren. And we wait. And later on in the day, we're like, hey, Darren approved your catch, your thing, good catch, which was great. And then later in the day, everyone Darren and the editor, they kind of come to the office. It's like one of their last days, kind of saying their farewells, and it was great. Afterwards, he came in. He was like, hey, he came into my office. He's like, hey, great catch. I'm like, thank you for catching that. And it goes a long way. You make it catch. Hello. You exchange info, and yeah, no, it's just helps. It hopefully he keeps that in his back mind.
I mean, this is someone who's been in the business for 10, 15, 20 years, saying thank you, and that was a good catch, that was a good save. So I would imagine you would want some aspiring filmmaker, editor along the lines to tell you the same thing, right? If they make that save.
Absolutely. You always just you want to be doing your job the best you possibly can, because at the end of the day, all anyone wants is to be able to trust the people that they are working with. And being that person is going to make you such an asset and someone that people remember and want to bring back. And ultimately, that's what you want to do.
Yeah, and Darren gave you his contact information, and that's huge. Seriously, he will remember her. And if you ever need something, I'm sure he would take a call or an email from you. Because very frankly, they don't do that very often,
Excuse me, I have to take this call. Michelle, let's skip a little bit and talk about the filmmaking process. Is it more of a challenge to work with a challenging actor, or is it just another day at the office for you? If you come in and you've got an actor who is demanding, if you will, they like their lighting a particular way, they want to make some adjustments to the script.
Well, I think it's actor by actor. They can drive you absolutely crazy, and sometimes, I'll tell stories. I mean, so I worked on a film called what was it called? I can't remember. End of Days? No. 13 Days. It was about the Cuban Missile Crisis. John Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, and Kevin Costner played his chief of staff, a real person. I can't remember the real guy's name now, Keith or something. Anyhow, Kevin was one of these people that you didn't get that close to. There are actors that you meet that are just like, hey, hi, how are you? And there are people that you say hi and you think they're going to be friends with you, which I never wanted to be friends with actors. But bosses I had would try to do that. But I remember this one scene we did. So it's 1963, and it's outdoors. It's a location shot. Kevin's coming out of his house. He's getting into a car. And he's gone to craft service, and he's got himself a cup of coffee in a Starbucks cup, because we had Starbucks cups, I guess, or Starbucks was giving us our coffee. And my boss went to him. He's about to do the scene. He's got this Starbucks coffee with the Starbucks logos, and you could tell it's a Starbucks cup. But they weren't around in 63, and it was driving her nuts. And she said, Kevin, you got to take one of my... And it was a back and forth, and he literally refused. And it was because he knew... he didn't care. You know what I mean? He just didn't care that he had the wrong period. I mean, it was a period film where we were doing all this historical, accurate stuff, and he didn't care, and he demanded. He
So
said,
how do you handle that?
well, with that, in that case, he got his way. He walked out there, and if you watch that scene, I haven't seen the movie for a long time, and if you saw him with that cup in hand, maybe he covered it with his hand, I don't know. But the fact was, he won't do that. You know, my husband's a producer, production manager. He's worked with Val Kilmer for a couple of times, and he has stories of Val like he has one story where Val's in a convertible, and they're shooting the convertible, and Val goes, I have the wrong shoes on, and nobody can tell him otherwise. And finally my husband goes up and says, you know, we're only shooting you from here up. Nobody sees your feet in the car. You're in a convertible. We're just seeing this. And, you know, he had to have the right shoes. Jim, my husband, said, you could have your boxers on. You could be naked from the waist down. But they demand stuff, and maybe the way he operates, I don't know how he works. You know, there's different systems, right, where you get immersed in your character or whatever. Like Nicolas Cage and Birdie had a bandage on his head from the Vietnam sequence, never took it off. Never took it off. He never came and interacted with us at lunch or at any time. You never saw him, whereas Matthew Modine's like playing football with the grips during lunch, and Matthew's and he just let this thing get beat up. He slept with it. It just aged, and then his work was done, and we went to like Stockton to shoot the Vietnam area, and Nicholas came to visit us, and it was like, no bandage, and like, hey, I'm Nick. How are you? He had ignored us for like few months before. So yeah, there's actors, and then there are actors that you make the connection. They say hi, they see you,
Emma, are you prepared for those type of experiences with a big name actor who is kind of going against the grain?
Hello? There we go. Yeah, I mean, especially like, I guess in post-production, especially, like, thankfully, we're not so often put up with the actors because so much of what we're doing is in post and, like, not necessarily with the actual actors and stuff. However, on this past job, on Caught Stealing, it was actually a unique experience. Every other film I've done prior, they're shooting somewhere else, where they're filming in London or they're filming in LA or wherever, and then I'm in New York with the post team, and we're receiving footage, and we're on during production, but we're not with the crew necessarily. But on this past project, it takes place in New York, and they were actually shooting on location in New York at studios in New York. So during production, they wanted us at the production office, which is a really exciting and unique experience. It doesn't really happen as often these days. Like, I know I'll hear stories of people older than me who've been in the industry longer, and like they would tell things of like bringing reels back and forth, like, I don't know, like being on set more and interacting a bit more. It happens less today, just because everything is so digital and can be transferred. But in that scenario, it was great. You got to be a part of the machine a bit, and that was really cool. Like got to be running drives back and forth to set, and like in those, you would run into actors or something, and it would be very cool. But they're very much in their zone and stuff. So in post-production, I don't find myself running into that too much. But nonetheless, you do have to be flexible. Like, we are working with them when it comes to ADR, because we're providing all the ADR materials. Sometimes they're in office, and it's, you're the person like introducing them and like getting them settled before the director comes in and stuff. And so, yeah, you just kind of have to be, willing. Like, thankfully, I've never had any negative experience. Everyone has been very lovely, anyone I've ever met. But yeah, just be willing to, be accommodating. Totally. Fantastic. Good.
I just want to say that you all, I didn't know what to expect, but you have been an incredibly awesome audience. Thank you so very much. And please give a big round of applause to our presenters today, Emma Swider and Michelle Souza. My name is Robert Luke. It has been a pleasure hanging out with you. I will make sure that I answer your text this morning or afternoon. I'm going to probably check out a film or so, okay? Thank you so much, folks, for coming out.